Welcome to this short tutorial where we're going to explore the importance of question analysis when considering answers to bid questions. In its simplest sense, a bid is essentially a set of answers written in response to a series of questions. To win, your aim is to have the strongest answers possible. To help you to achieve this, it's worth ensuring that you have a full and accurate understanding of each question posed by the buyer. We often see stories in the news about politicians retracting statements where they claim to have misheard or misunderstood a question which has been put to them. We also equally hear stories of school kids who have misread or misunderstood an exam question, invariably resulting in a lower grade, even in subjects where they are otherwise strong. The same situation can be surprisingly common in bid writing, but there are techniques which you can apply to ensure that you have thoroughly and fully considered every question. The purpose of a tender exercise is to help the buyer identify the most capable and cost-effective supplier to deliver their requirement. A well-designed invitation to tender or request for proposals should set questions which best enable the buyer to assess the relevant skills and aptitudes of potential suppliers. Each question will aim to test a relevant competency. A good answer will provide assurance that you have the necessary skills, representing high assurance and low risk. It is therefore worth considering the buyer's underlying intent behind each question posed. Which organisational competency are they looking to test? Why is it important that the ideal supplier should have this competency? How might an absence of this competency present a higher risk? In this respect, it is worth cross-referencing the questions back to the buyer's specification. They may have requirements which they expect to see demonstrated and evidenced throughout your answers, even if these do not fall within the specific wording of the question. For example, the question may ask you how you will train your staff, whereas the specification may detail the minimum skills which staff require. Your answer must therefore implicitly explain how your approach to training will ensure that these minimum staff skills are developed. By considering these issues, you may get a better sense of why each question has been set, which should in turn influence how you prepare your answer. A good invitation to tender should include details of how your answers will be scored. Some questions may be scored on a straight pass or fail basis. These are the most important. If you fail one of these, your bid may be disqualified regardless of how good your other answers are. Different questions may also carry different weightings. Higher weighted questions will account for more points towards your final bid score. Different weightings can be significant, and failure to achieve a high score on the highest weighted questions may make it impossible for your bid to win overall. You need to give the most time and attention to these types of questions. Alongside considering the scores for each question, also consider what features of the answer the buyer may award most marks for. For example, the scoring criteria may state that top marks will only be awarded to answers which demonstrate clear evidence. Even therefore, if the question doesn't explicitly ask you to provide evidence, this will still be a key component which evaluators will be looking for. If there isn't a weighting scale being applied, consider instead which questions are likely to be the most critical to the buyer more broadly. Which ones focus on the core problem, which they're trying to solve? Which questions offer you the best opportunity to showcase and differentiate your offer? These are the areas to focus on. The buyer may not always pose their questions clearly, creating a risk that your interpretation of what the question is asking being different to their interpretation. Here's an example question. Describe how your proposal for contract X will integrate with other relevant local services. You should include an example of engagement with other local service providers. The first part of the question seems clear in asking you to describe how your model will integrate with other services. The requirement for example is, however, perhaps less clear. On one hand, the buyer may be expecting a general example of how you have integrated activity on previous contracts with other relevant services. This would demonstrate your competency to achieve service integration across the contract lifecycle. On the other hand, the buyer may be expecting an example of preparatory engagement activity which you've already undertaken in specific readiness for contract X. This would demonstrate that you have relevant local relationships already in place to support this specific new contract. Either of these interpretations could be correct. It's therefore always advisable to talk through each question with your colleagues to consider all aspects and help eliminate the risk of misinterpretation. If you're still confused, consider asking the buyer to clarify their question. In the case of this question, one option may be to include both examples, thereby ensuring that both scenarios are covered off. Some questions are already clearly broken down into clear sub-questions. For example, the question may include a list of bulleted subpoints which must be addressed. On other occasions, this can be less clear. In these instances, you may need to break the question down yourself to ensure that you have identified and answered it fully. Take this question, for example. How will you appoint, induct, and continuously develop the staff required to deliver this contract? This question can be interpreted as being made up of 3 sub-questions. How will you appoint the required staff? This may involve detailing your recruitment process, or how you may reallocate existing staff to this new contract. How will you induct the required staff? This may involve detailing how you will deliver any contract startup and familiarisation training which your staff team may require. And how will you continuously develop the staff required? This may involve detailing your ongoing cycle of staff appraisal, upskilling and refresher training. In considering your answer, you should assume that all 3 sub-questions are of equal importance. Questions normally begin with one of 6 words: how, who, what, when, where or why. In bid documents, most questions begin with the word how. How questions ask you to explain the process through which something is done. For example, how will you appoint, induct and continuously develop the staff required to deliver this contract? You can answer this by simply saying that you will apply an effective recruitment and training process. This tells the buyer what you will do, but not how you will do it. To properly answer the question, you need to provide further detail about the stages and key activities within that process. This helps the buyer to visualise your process and gives them a sense of assurance that you're competent to deliver your solution. You may feel that you've got a great service feature or innovation that really defines your offer. The problem is the buyer hasn't posed the question which allows for you to showcase this. You should tread carefully here. Some suppliers fall into the trap of digressing away from answering the question to focus in more detail on what they feel is more important sales topics. Whilst this may be informative for the buyer, remember that the buyer has posed questions to enable them to compare the responses of different suppliers. If they can't compare your answer to other bidders because you have gone off topic, and in doing so not answered the question, then you will probably get scored down. You must always fully answer the question in hand, even if that means that additional sales-worthy information about your service may have to be left out. We hope that you found this tutorial to be helpful. Please feel free to check out the other tutorials on our website or get in touch to find out more.